My cousin married my tyrannical ex-boyfriend, badmouthed me in her wedding speech, and then tried to break into my house at night. My cousin Julia, 27, started dating my ex-boyfriend Louis, 29, 2 years ago. I, 27, was in a relationship with Louis for 3 years. We started dating after he graduated from university and I was a sophomore in college. We broke up a couple of weeks after my 20th birthday. To be honest, the relationship wasn't the best, and I really regret that this was the person I had my first adult relationship with. We seemed like the perfect couple from the outside, but in reality, things were different. He was a very insecure and controlling person and forbade me from doing many things, going to bars with friends or talking to male friends. He was constantly watching me, and if I didn't do what he wanted, he would start manipulating and gaslighting me, convincing me that I was to blame for the relationship going wrong. I was very afraid of losing him and did everything possible to make sure Louis wouldn't leave me, but it still wasn't enough for him to stay. In the end, he did leave me, saying that things weren't working out between us, and then blocked me so I couldn't contact him. I tried very hard to get in touch with him, but after the breakup, he completely disappeared, and 2 months later I found out from acquaintances that he already had a new girlfriend, so it was a complete waste of my time. After the breakup, we didn't talk for a long time, but then when I turned 25, he finally unblocked me and wrote, "Happy birthday." I didn't answer him and thought it was strange that he was writing to me at all, as I already had a boyfriend by that time, but he kept writing to me despite my silence, and in the end, I had to block him. After that, we didn't talk again for several months. However, just a few months after my birthday, Julia invited me to her house. When I arrived, she said she wanted to introduce me to her boyfriend, and it turned out to be Louis. It turned out that he had written to me on my birthday precisely because he wanted to get on good terms with me before this. They had met at work, started dating, and were very serious. Julia and I had been very close since childhood, so this was a real shock for me. She knew very well how badly we had broken up and how toxic he had been towards me, so I was completely stunned to find out they were now together. She said she understood my discomfort but asked me to give him a chance. I really wanted to try to accept this news, but it was too much for me. I wanted to be happy for Julia, but Louis was a person who had caused me a lot of pain in the past. It was my first serious relationship. In middle and high school, I only had crushes. He really messed up my life, so I held a huge grudge against him for his behavior. I tried to explain to Julia as tactfully as possible that although I wished her happiness, I couldn't accept that she was now with Louis and I didn't want to be a part of her life anymore. She was very upset and tried to talk to me several times, but I couldn't come to terms with it because she, of all people, knew best how toxic he had been with me and how deeply he had traumatized me. But she continued to date him, claiming that he had changed and was better now. I didn't believe it. She was free to have a relationship with him. I had no problem with that, but I also had the right to cut him, and her along with him, out of my life. For me, it was simple. Of course, it was hard for me because Julia and I were not just cousins but also very good friends. However, for my own peace of mind, I had to make this decision. After she told me she had started dating Louis, I almost stopped talking to her. For the last 2 years, we have been cold to each other. When she realized that I wasn't going to talk to her, she started acting distant herself, and I don't blame her for that. We would see each other at family events and just ignore each other, although we used to always stick together and gossip about everyone. Now everything had changed, and honestly, I was fine with that. Everyone has their own life and is free to do as they please. I had no issues with Julia. I just didn't want to talk to her anymore, that's all. But apparently, she took it to heart and wanted to get revenge on me. She started spreading all sorts of nasty rumors about me among our relatives, trying to ruin my reputation. I thought it was completely unnecessary, because I would never have done that to her. Never, even despite our relationship over the past year. She told me that I was the reason for her breakup with Louis and that supposedly I have no moral principles. Together with Louis, they spread rumors that I flirted with other guys right in front of him, and this was supposedly the real reason for his jealousy and desire to control me. They made it seem as if I was the flirtatious woman who made him insecure, although in reality it was the exact opposite. It was he who allowed himself to flirt excessively with other girls and expected me to take it calmly, while he himself did not like that I had male friends with whom I simply communicated. He constantly manipulated and gaslighted me gradually, forcing me to give up communication with everyone who was dear to me. It really hurt me that they were trying to slander me in front of my own family, but to be honest, I was too busy with my life to really worry about it. Besides, no one really believed them, so I decided not to react. I knew that my reaction was exactly what they were looking for, and therefore I consciously did not give in to provocations. Besides, I understood perfectly well that if I wanted to, I could easily stop all this. All it would take was a talk with my aunt, who would quickly sort things out. Despite the fact that I was no longer close with Julia, I maintained a very good relationship with her mother. My aunt is a federal judge, and I was sure that she would do the right thing. She is my father's older sister, and everyone knows that she has an iron will and will never do anything dishonest or wrong. I don't understand how Julia could have grown up to be like that, considering who her mother is. One conversation with my aunt would have been enough to stop this whole circus, but I also understood that it would greatly harm Julia herself, as she was quite financially dependent on her mother. She recently launched her own jewelry line, but from what I've heard, things weren't going so well for her. In any case, I didn't want to bother my aunt with such trifles and was sure that I could handle everything myself, so I didn't tell her anything. Besides, I was even curious what other ridiculous rumors they would come up with about me, because my cousins regularly came and told me what Julia had said about me again, so for me it became more of a fun and entertaining thing. Then, 6 months ago, they got engaged and announced their wedding date. Soon my parents received an invitation, but I did not. That was perfectly fine with me. I didn't expect an invitation to their wedding. Even if I had been invited, I wouldn't have gone, considering everything that had happened between me and Julia, not to mention Louis. The wedding took place 3 days ago, and for me, it was just another day. I didn't think much about what was happening there, but at some point, my phone started literally blowing up with messages from relatives. Everyone was actively discussing some speech that Louis and Julia had given at the wedding, and I was in complete confusion. Then my parents called and said that we needed to talk urgently. They were the ones who told me what had happened, and at that moment I lost my temper. It turned out that they had decided to take the opportunity and gave a disgusting speech about me at the wedding, spreading all sorts of vile things to a large audience. They wanted to turn all our relatives against me, and they might well have succeeded if I didn't have evidence that I could use against them. Julia and Louis were clever enough not to mention my name directly, but they constantly referred to a certain ex-girlfriend who was not at the wedding. This clearly pointed to me, because who else could they have meant? They repeated all the rumors they had been trying to spread about me for a long time, that I was a flighty gold digger who was completely dependent on Louis and expected him to pay for all the expenses. He was supposedly forced to support me because I insisted on it being a regular student with no extra money, and therefore demanded financial support from him. But that was also a complete lie. I always insisted that we split the costs on dates, and I never expected him to pay for anything, let alone demanded it. But the worst thing they said about me was that I had supposedly cheated on him, and according to them, the cheating was the reason for our breakup. At the wedding, they said they were very glad that I was no longer in their lives and that I was not at the celebration, supposedly because they did not want such a negative influence around them. They even gave our relatives an ultimatum. From now on, either I or they would be invited to family events. If I was present, they would not be there. After that, people started literally bombarding my phone with messages about this situation. But I only got the full picture of what happened from my parents. And as I said before, I was incredibly angry. I thanked my parents for leaving the wedding immediately after that speech, not wanting to tolerate the vile things Julia had stooped to. My parents also told me that my aunt was completely bewildered by what was happening and immediately spoke with them to clarify if what Julia said in her speech was true, because it was completely out of character for me, and she was right. I really hadn't done anything of the sort, and her doubts about the truthfulness of her daughter's words were completely justified. In short, after I found out exactly what they had said about me in their wedding speech, I decided not to hold back anymore and found old screenshots of conversations that proved they were lying. I had to do a lot of digging, and it took a considerable amount of time as I scrolled through the conversation to find the messages I needed. Fortunately, after a very long time, I was finally able to find the conversation between me and my ex that I was looking for. These messages were sent around the time of our breakup, and at that time he was being particularly toxic and cruel. He said a lot of nasty things to me, like he regretted ever starting to date me, that he had wasted 3 years of his life when he could have been with others because he supposedly had plenty of options back then, but now he would finally date other women. There was no mention of any betrayal, and I'm sure if I had really cheated on him, he wouldn't have let it go so easily. I scrolled further through the conversation and found other messages where he was being toxic towards me. After that, I posted everything online without explanation, without a caption, because these chats spoke for themselves, and they did. After posting the screenshots, people started writing to me again and leaving comments under the post, saying that they already knew that everything said about me was untrue. It seemed very strange to them that I could have behaved that way, because they had known me since childhood and I was not the kind of person capable of such things. These screenshots clearly proved that everything was a lie, and the realization that my family was on my side and not theirs meant everything to me. Moreover, several people who left the wedding precisely because of what was said about me wrote to me. So although Julia and Louis had hoped to turn people against me, their speech backfired, and now there is no one on their side at all. Even my aunt, Julia's mother, turned her back on them. They contacted me right after the wedding and literally begged me to forgive them because, as it turned out, after my aunt saw the screenshots I had posted, she spoke with them and said how disappointed she was that Julia had turned out to be so deceitful and had tried to ruin my reputation just because I didn't want to continue a relationship with her after she got involved with my ex. By that time, most of the guests had already left the wedding because of all this drama. My aunt also told Julia that she was deeply upset by her behavior and had expected more from her, so until she apologized to me and I forgave her, my aunt wanted nothing more to do with them. And then my aunt left the wedding, despite Julia's best efforts to convince her otherwise, because she was really heavily dependent on her mother financially. That same night, the two of them called me and started tearfully apologizing because they understood that they couldn't manage without my aunt's support. She had been financially supporting Julia for quite some time. She was actually planning to close her business and take a break, which meant she would have depended on her mother even more. But since my aunt decided to disown her, their plans came to an end, and Julia became seriously worried about her future. That's why she got in touch, wanting me to forgive her, delete the post, and talk to my aunt. I was too angry about everything that had happened and refused, blocking them both. But since then, they have been desperately trying to contact me and convince me to change my mind, and now I'm really confused. I don't know what to do. My aunt is a very decent person. We talked. She wrote to me herself the day after the wedding to apologize for everything Julia had done. I said that I didn't want my relationship with Julia to ruin my bond with my aunt. I hadn't let it happen before, and I wasn't going to now, so everything is fine between us. I know for a fact that if I talk to her, I can sort everything out for Julia, but to be honest, I don't feel obligated to do so. She's a grown woman and should deal with the consequences of her actions herself. On the other hand, I feel awkward at the thought that I can help her and am consciously not doing so. In short, I'm confused, so please help me. Am I doing the wrong thing by not wanting to talk to my aunt and persuade her to forgive my cousin after she gave a disgusting speech at her wedding slandering me? Well, I suggest you pause this video right now and write in the comments what you think the author should do. Should she still try to mend her relationship with Julia or do nothing? Personally, my opinion is that her doubts about being able to help but consciously not doing so, as she says, are completely unfounded, because Julia, at the very least, could have just done nothing too, but she did. She caused trouble. That is, Julia, in this situation, was only concerned with how to cause more trouble for her friend. So yes, I believe that nothing needs to be done here. Update 1. Hello. First of all, a huge thank you to everyone for your comments and support. Before I get to the update, I want to clarify one point. My parents were at the wedding, as were many other family members, because they belong to the older generation. They had no idea about the rumors that were being spread about me. Louis and Julia said all this mainly to our cousins, relatives. our age. They did not involve the elders in this, so my parents had no idea what was being said about me and came to the wedding solely out of respect for my aunt, although they suspected that something was wrong between me and Julia after she started dating this guy. Well, I deliberately didn't tell them anything and didn't complain, just like I didn't tell my aunt, because I didn't want to drag them into such petty squabbles. I was above that, unlike Julia and Louis. In short, the point is that my parents were not aware and therefore went to the wedding. There is no need to blame or be angry with them. As soon as they and some other people from the older generation found out what was said about me at the wedding, they left immediately and no longer communicated with Julia and Louis, so that's clear, I hope. Now to the point. A week has passed since the wedding. I blocked Louis and Julia so they couldn't contact me, but that didn't stop them. They continue to create new social media accounts and send me letters, although I just block them again and again. They are desperate, but I have firmly decided that I am not going to interfere or help them. I continue to keep in touch with my aunt, and she has made it clear that she will only start supporting her daughter again after I forgive her. But to be honest, I don't think I should forgive my cousin, because for a whole year I kept silent and let them talk bad about me simply because I didn't take them seriously, and they took it as a green light and crossed all boundaries. Now let them face the consequences. There is one more point. To be honest, I don't think she deserves support from her mother at all. She is almost 30, and in my opinion, at that age, a person should already understand what they want from life. I just can't imagine how you can still be financially dependent on your parents. And it's not because she's uneducated or incapable. She's just always been too lazy to hold down any job. Even when we had just graduated, she acted the same way, and I hoped it would pass with age, but nothing has changed. So, in essence, I'm even doing her a favor, because the lack of financial help from her aunt might finally teach her to work or at least do something serious. In any case, I've already made up my mind. I'm not going to help her. I discussed this with my parents to get rid of the guilt, and they said they fully support my decision. Whether to forgive her or not is my choice alone. I am not obligated to forgive her if I don't think she deserves it, even if I am worried about her future. Besides, Louis still has a decent job and can perfectly well support both of them if they really want to live without my aunt's help. In the end, I talked to my parents, my friends, and you here, and most people think I have no reason to feel guilty, and honestly, I feel much better. But I did delete that post with the screenshots of the conversation because I didn't see the point in keeping it up any longer. The whole family already knew what had happened, and I didn't want it to remain on my profile, as I have many other followers, and it would be difficult to explain everything to them, so it was easier to just remove it. Now I'm trying to focus on myself and let go of all the anger and guilt that has been building up in me for the past few days. I've gone back to meditation, trying to distract myself and get through all this in the calmest state possible. I really hope that Julia and Louis will also finally start living their own lives instead of building theirs around me and making me the reason they even get out of bed in the morning, as has been the case so far. I think that will be better for all of us. Update 2. Hello, a month has passed since the wedding, and as far as I know, Louis and Julia are back to their old ways. My aunt still doesn't speak to them because I haven't forgiven them. Well, at this point, I don't have to, because I understand perfectly well that their apologies were not sincere. They were only apologizing for the money from my aunt. They weren't sorry, they just wanted financial support. A couple of days after their unsuccessful attempts to convince me to forgive them and talk to my aunt, they gave up when they realized I wasn't responding. And then they started spreading rumors about me again, but this time, they were especially inventive. It turns out that now they are telling everyone that I am deliberately trying to destroy their relationship with my aunt because I want to take all the inheritance for myself. This makes no sense at all. It's complete absurdity, as if I'm capable of something like that. My parents are fine with money. It's even ridiculous to talk about it. I have a good job myself and I support myself. I don't even think about any inheritance, because at this rate, with God's help, I won't have to depend on anyone financially at all. Maybe they are the ones who need the money, and that's why they have such thoughts. In short, they are now telling this everywhere when they run into someone from the family, which happens often. We all live in the same city, and they live near several of our relatives. People are starting to avoid them like the plague, but they still find a way to talk about me. I don't understand at all why they are so obsessed with me. I haven't done anything for a whole month. I just ignore them, and they still can't let go of what happened. In short, last week I finally had enough of it all, and I told my aunt everything. She said that now, even if they apologize, she is not going to resume contact with them. She even said this to Julia directly and blocked her again. Now they are even angrier at me than before. I know this because they created another email account and sent me a very nasty message. This is now the only way they can contact me. They wrote that I will pay for all this. Yeah, right. So scary. I understand that they are losing their minds right now, and although I'm not really scared, all of this is, to put it mildly, annoying. I replied that if they try to pull anything on me, I will immediately call the police and send them to jail without a second thought, so they should think about what they are doing. I hope this cools them down. And if not, well, I have an excellent security system at home. Update 3. So, 4 days ago I received a letter from Louis and Julia in which they wrote that I would have to answer for everything I had done. I warned them again that if they tried to do anything to me, I would immediately report them to the police. But that didn't stop them, and they did the most idiotic thing they could have done. Last night, they tried to break into my house. Julia has been to my house many times, and she knows perfectly well that I have a very advanced security system installed. So, as soon as they even tried to open the door, the system immediately notified me. I don't understand at all why they thought my door might be unlocked in the middle of the night. I immediately called the police and reported that someone was trying to break into my house. I had a feeling it might be Julia and Louis, but just in case, I didn't take any chances. The police arrived in about 15 minutes, and unfortunately for them, they were dressed like real robbers. They were detained not far from my house as they were trying to escape. They had come on bicycles. They tried to convince the police that they knew me personally and weren't going to steal anything. They just wanted to break in and talk to me, scare me a little. I don't understand at all why they admitted to this, as if it makes their behavior more acceptable from a legal point of view. As soon as Julia was handcuffed, she immediately burst into tears and began to beg me not to press charges against her. But I no longer had any sympathy for her. You can't keep messing up and expect to be forgiven. Louis just looked at me with pure hatred, but I didn't care at all. I was already used to it. After that, I just went to sleep. I have to work early in the morning, and in the morning, I told my aunt and parents everything. They said they already knew. Julia had used her phone call to call her aunt and ask her to get her out of the station, but her aunt didn't even go to visit her. So now no one knows what will happen next. I am definitely going to file a report against them because I want to get a restraining order. They have obviously lost their minds, and I don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. Well, that's all. Unfortunately, there are no more updates. In this story, there is only one small question that slightly worries me. Do you think this Julia's mother is really doing the right thing by cutting off all ties with her like that? I have already voiced my position on such mothers many times in other videos. For me, it's not particularly clear. No matter what your child is like, why treat them like that? I mean, you cannot give money. That's understandable. You cannot bail them out of jail, but still, not to communicate at all. Well, to me, that's a bit strange. Although, at the same time, I absolutely understand the motives of such mothers. Write your opinion in the comments. Let's discuss this topic once again. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch our previous videos, which you will see right here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to listen to similar stories in the future. And good luck to you!